For this top part, make sure you know the definitions of each quadrilateral and their specific characteristics. So here are my answers. Number 2, classify each figure with as many names as possible. That would be like if you lived in Grand Rapids, write all the places that you live. So you live in Grand Rapids, you live in Michigan, you live in the USA, you live in the world. So this is kind of start at the hierarchy of the specific one and then move up. So this has 4 right angles, so this is a rectangle. And because it's a rectangle, it's also a parallelogram. And because it's a parallelogram, it's also a quadrilateral. Letter B, it's an isosceles trapezoid. So I write isosceles trapezoid. And because it's an isosceles trapezoid, it's also a trapezoid. And because it's a trapezoid, it's also a quadrilateral. Letter C, 4 sides are congruent, so it has to be a rhombus. And because it's a rhombus, it has to be a parallelogram. Because it's a parallelogram, it has to be a quadrilateral. So that's what it is by classifying as many names as possible. To name the precise term of each figure, you look at the markings and just give it one name. So this has 490s, so this is a rectangle. This one has consecutive sides that are congruent. Therefore, it's a kite. And these are purposely drawn to not look like the exact figure. This one has 1 pair of opposite sides parallel, and there's no tick marks to show that it's an isosceles trapezoid, so it's a trapezoid. And letter D has 4 sides equal, so it needs to be a rhombus. So know the difference between naming the precise term as one term, classify it as listing them all out. Right down here, use your knowledge of parallelograms to solve for x and y. So I know that parallelograms have these angles are supplementary. Consecutive angles are supplementary. So that means that 5y plus 10 plus 5y minus 10 equals 180. So y equals 18. Oops, y equals 18. And then I also know that these two are supplementary, and actually these two are supplementary too, but I don't want to mess with the x's and the y's. So in this case, x minus 10 plus x plus 10 equals 180. So 2x equals 180, so x equals 90 is my answer. I also know that opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent, so I'm going to set 3x minus 2 equal to 4x minus 12 and solve for x. So x equals 10, but then be careful because the question is find AC, so you have to plug 10 back in. So it's 30 minus 2 is 28. AC is 28. And I also know, so I know that same side angles add up to 180. These two add up to 180. And I know that the blue ones are equal. So x equals y in this case. So I do 180 minus 89 to get what x is. So x equals 91, therefore y is 91. So on the next part, I know that the diagonals bisect each other. So that means that these two are equal and these two are equal. But it does not mean that the red is equal to the blue. So I solved for x. X is 5, y is 10. And then on letter E, I know that ED is 7. So I'm going to mark that in. And I'm going to mark in that CB is 16. So if this is 7, then this part has to be 7 because the diagonals bisect each other. The 2 red ones are congruent and the 2 blue ones are congruent. So x has to be 7, and then y has to be half of 16, so y has to be 8. And then the last one of the parallelograms, I know that these two lines are parallel. So you have this transversal, It's a horrible drawing right there. And so these are alternate interior angles. These two are alternate interior angles. So therefore, this one up here has to be 42 degrees, and this one, the x, has to be 60 degrees. So a common mistake would be having those two match up. And then down here, if the figure A, that looks like a square. So squares have equal sides. Oh wait, no, it's not a square, it's just a rectangle. It's not marked up. But if it's a parallelogram, the opposite sides are congruent. So you set these two equal and these two equal. So I'll write down 3f plus 2 equals 5f minus 8. Okay, so I wrote out that G has to be 11 and F has to be 5. So with a kite, same consecutive sides are congruent. So when I'm looking at this, is initially I want to set these two equal, but that's not going to get me anywhere because I'll have y equals something and y equals something with x. So I want to get it in one variable. So I'm going to do these two first. So I'm going to set 3x equal to 2x plus 8. So this is x minus 10 equals 8, x equals 18. And I'm going to use 18 and plug it in up here. So y minus 10 equals 28, or 38. Because 18 plus 20 is 38. So then y has to equal 48. Okay, letter C is because this is a trapezoid, same side interior angles add up to 180. So x has to be 140 degrees, and then y has to be 70 degrees. And then D with a kite. With this kite right here, these opposite angles are congruent. So y has to be 130 degrees. But it does not mean that this is 25. That's where people mess up. So you have to use the fact that all four of these angles add up to a quadrilateral, which is 360. So I'm going to do 360 minus 130 minus 130 minus 25 to get the answer. So 360 minus 260 is 100 minus 25 is 75. So x equals 75 degrees. And y is 130. Okay, in E, I'm going to use my knowledge that this is a kite. Kites make 90 degrees. Their diagonals are perpendicular. I'm also going to put that these two segments are congruent. It does not mean that these two segments are congruent. We kind of talked about that last time, that this is not equal to this. With a kite too, if this is 65, this has to be 65 degrees. So now use your knowledge of a triangle for this one. So this is going to be, T's, because this is 90, T is going to be 25. This is going to be 25, because that's 65. This has to be 20 degrees. This is not 65 necessarily. You have a triangle down here. 90 plus 20 is 110, minus 180. V is 70 degrees. 70 degrees. So look for the right triangles, knowing that this is a perpendicular bisector right here. So this is making a 90. These two are congruent. Does not mean that these two are congruent. And then letter F, you have an isosceles trapezoid. So isosceles trapezoid are these base angles are congruent. So this has to be 70 degrees. Also, these two angles have to add up to 180. So this one has to be 110, and then this one is 110 as well. And then here's another angle one. It's a kite because these consecutive sides are congruent. So let's fill in that this is 90, 90, 90, 90. This one across has to be 70, because this one's 70. So now you have this two right triangles that are 90, 70. So this has to be 20 and this has to be 20. And now the triangles on the left hand side, 90, 45, x has to be 45. And then this one has to be 45. And then u has to be 45 only because this one right here is 45. So remember with the kite, when you're talking about the segments, that these two segments are congruent, right here. It does not mean that these two segments are congruent. Just these two are.